Hi there, welcome to Gnostic Vlog Confessio 24. I think it was the last vlog in which I said that I'd be taking a break from creating and uploading videos, and don't seem to have stopped yet. Um, but it's been good. I've taken the video creation has even taken over from the music composition at the moment. Um, because I think I have important things to say, and I'm pretty happy about the last video I made, which was "Swing Low, Sweet Chariot," and I kind of like that. And I'll come back to why I think thoughts are actually quite important. I mean, I know praxis is important, practice and meditation are important when we go beyond thoughts and go beyond language. Um, anyway, be that as it may. Uh, yeah, I mean, I've made a couple of videos which I think are rather controversial, and they're still remaining in my pending folder. I really don't know whether to upload them or not. I mean, they're not terribly controversial, I suppose, but YouTube, Google management really don't like any kind of controversy at the moment. And I wrote a poem recently as well, and I made that into a video and I uploaded it. And then I made it into a private video because I wasn't really quite sure whether I should rock the boat with my video. And anyway, it's like that poem I uploaded about justice, about judgment, judge not lest he be judged, kind of thing. The problem with poetry, I mean, it wasn't a very good poem anyway, because there was cliches in it and repetition, and the language didn't flow very well either. But apart from that, the trouble with poetry is that obviously it's emotions recollected in tranquility, all right, but it's still emotions. And sometimes, you can go into polemic. And the problem with polemic is that, especially nowadays, is that, it can really land you in the thick of it. Either because, you become non-PC, which is a big problem, or you just simply criticize somebody when in fact there is no need to criticize them. Especially if they've already been diagnosed with a mental illness, and then it becomes pretty unkind to criticize somebody who is obviously suffering mentally. And so I just in the end thought, well, I actually liked the poem. I thought, well, it was quite polished and actually quite interesting, and had something to say, which is quite useful. But then I thought, well, I'm going to probably have to tone it down and take out all the bits that refer to somebody living, a personality or a celebrity, even as he is. And he is a he, by the way. And I think that it isn't helpful really to pick fights with people and pick fights with groups of people, especially nowadays when nobody's got anything else to do but kind of be introspective and but not in a good way, being a sort of, sitting in their bedrooms, brooding and ruminating about the horrors and the problems of life and the problems of their own life due to the pandemic, and getting all steamed up about, storms in a teacup kind of thing. I don't want to stir up storms in a teacup and internet dramas. Uh, I don't think there's so many internet dramas now, simply because people are aware that you can get chucked off the network now, or any kind of network, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, for pretty much anything really that is going to that is sort of fisticuffs kind of thing, and it never did any good before. So perhaps it's a good thing that these networks are stricter now than they used to be, because it's not nice to be name calling. It's not nice to be, pawning people and pointing out their frailties and their problems, as if they're not aware of those themselves, really. And then people go out and take it out on people on the street. Well, they would do if they weren't in lockdown, except in the USA where nobody is actually taking any notice of lockdown. But still, people are likely to, start taking it out on their nearest and dearest if people are criticising them on the internet. You know what I mean? So really, I think it will remain a private video until such time as I think it's appropriate to publish it. And the other two videos, which are arguably more controversial, really, although they're not about an individual person, they'll have to remain either as private videos or unuploaded videos in the pending box for the time being as well, really. And I also note, of course, I think I've covered this before, that my poetry, if I go on with the poetry, gets darker and darker. And also my output gets more and more controversial and more aggressive, actually. There's a lot of anger in me, actually. So, and some people on the internet like that. They like you to be aggressive and on the net because it kind of, I suppose they live vicariously through your anger as expressed in poetry and video making and music even. But I think it rather feeds the fire, you know. I think it's a time now, especially now, for reflection and calm rather than getting hysterical about things and artistic, in quotation marks, about things, which usually means some kind of sort of expressed, stylized hysteria, which I've done before on my channel, which got to such a fever pitch that although it was getting a lot of fans, YouTube, Google management were not fans. And since it's their network, they're entitled to say be off with you, and that's okay because if you want to do stuff that's controversial, well, get your own server, get your own server, pay for it, and have fun on it, but don't put your stuff up on a commercial network that's trying to get advertising revenue from people. From advertisers that are beginning to say, look, we don't want our products and services associated with total insanity, if you don't mind, because it looks really, really bad. And so I understand why these commercial networks are sensitive because they are bound to their advertisers, and if their advertisers are beginning to moan about the network and about the notoriety of the content of the particular network, they're going to withdraw their revenue, and then the network will close. And what's the point in that? I mean, people are pretty broad-minded nowadays, but I suppose there's a limit to how broad-minded people can be. Anyway, so that's one thing I want to talk about today. The second thing is as I say, I'm happy with my last upload. And I think almost really, if you're happy with your last upload, leave it at that, leave the table while you're winning kind of thing, although I have got a couple of other videos which are quite interesting and I don't think are too controversial, but possibly a little bit more personal than the others were. But what I wanted to say really was that I think I like making my videos. I think my videos to me, are a sort of meditation. They are there's lots of thoughts buzzing around in my head. So many thoughts that I find meditation really, really difficult, actually, as a matter of fact. And I'm trying to do this, what they call the centering prayer, and I'm finding it very difficult to do that. As I've done meditation, I've always found it very difficult. It's hard to, and I think if you have to try and sort of, be a bit fierce with yourself, you're kind of missing the point of meditation as well, really, It's best just to let those thoughts flow by, And I was intrigued, really, by an analogy given by someone talking about the centering prayer. His analogy was very interesting. He said, there's a river. And there are these kind of boats sailing down the river, all kinds of different shapes and sizes, like, barges and steamboats and pleasure cruisers and I don't know what all. And all that they're sailing down they're punting down the river or sailing down or or chugging down with their motors or roaring down, which they shouldn't be because you shouldn't actually go too fast on a river because you destroy the riverbank. But anyway, all these boats are going past, and each one of these boats represents a thought. And of course, the problem is that when you've got a thought and it becomes attractive, and you want to go and explore it, and you want to go and look at it, and you want to go and evaluate it and say, "Oh, that's a nice thought," or "That's a horrible thought," or "I shouldn't be having that thought," or or "Aren't I amazing for having that thought?" Which is usually the case for me. "Aren't I wonderful?" Because big ego. So I have these thoughts, but of course, the objective of quietening the mind and entering into a conversation with God, as the prayer puts it, as that's the objective of centering prayer, is to basically, well, you're looking at the surface of the water, and then you're going down below the surface of the water, and you're going down towards the very bottom of the river itself, the river bed, and you're kind of exploring very gently the contents of the river bed. And then I thought about that. So this is really, your consciousness is sort of diving down below the water, and it's represented by this cross here. But this also represents the trajectory of soul, because soul is in the transcendence, and then it comes down into the lower finite worlds and goes back up again, taking with it, hopefully, your consciousness as you have constructed it in this lifetime. And this central vertical line represents the action of the Holy Spirit and of the avatars of the transcendent God coming down and intervening. Well, not so much intervening, but evangelizing or inspiring, better word, inspiring or facilitating spiritual growth. Having got to the nadir of one's experience as soul or mind, then through inspiration, through facilitation, your soul or your consciousness goes back up to the level it was before. And then this blue horizontal line represents, I suppose, the limit of the worlds of the demiurge, or perhaps the limit of the demiurge's worlds are actually more or less nearly at the top, in fact. But anyway, so returning to the analogy of meditation, once you got to the bottom of the river, to the river bed, as I say, you discover certain things there, certain secret things, and then I was thinking, in fact, what actually lies on the river bed is the gold, the Rhine gold. In the actual in actually Wagner's Ring cycle, and Albrecht goes down. Well, at the Nibelungen, they guard the gold, and Albrecht persuades them to give up the gold if he will renounce love. You see. And so I think if you do find gold on this riverbed, you best leave it there because you don't want to trade your love for this gold. And I think a lot of mystics, so-called mystics, actually do that. And I'm thinking, I'm thinking of you, Alistair Crowley. It seems to me you're like Albrecht in that you substituted love for this gold, for magical power, even though you said it was scientific illuminism. Well, I don't know what I'm talking to him for. He's not even here, or is he? Anyway, so you think, perhaps you would agree that to a large extent, there was a substitution there, and a disregard for love, and a fixation on magical knowledge, and even magical power, the power to get things done without having to work for them. Well, you do work for them, but in a different way. So I think that if you do find gold down there, you best leave it down there, because you just want to see the gold. You don't want to take the gold anywhere. And having seen the gold, I suppose then you understand, or you get an intimation of immortality. You see what is potentially within yourself, the gold within yourself, the spirit spark, soul within yourself, which reflects, in fact, the gold that is the transcendence, as it were. So that you catch sight of the gold, or even the golden holy grail at the bottom of the Rhine, but you leave it there, and you go back up and return to your thoughts again, which are still drifting by on the river Rhine, and basically you enter into a different relationship with those thoughts, a bit of a calmer relationship. You're not quite so excited by your thoughts as you were before, and that's a good thing. Okay, that's a constructive thing. And I think that could be what is meant by entering into a conversation with God. It's sort of not literal language. It's language really for improving the relationship between you and your thoughts, and between you and this world. And that's one of the objectives, in fact, of soul awareness. Um, so I just taken this analogy that was presented on YouTube about the centering prayer, and I just extended it a little bit. But as I said, that's a thought, isn't it? Or a set of thoughts which I had during contemplation. So I don't know about meditation. I don't know about even 20 minutes of meditation. I usually work very fast, so I have a lot of thoughts which come to me very, very quickly, and symbols, and also channeling energy, and regression, which thoughts back into the past and things like that, distant past, and I work very, very fast. You see, really almost instantaneously. So I suppose I'm a bit, perhaps I'm got Tourette's syndrome or something, or a bit autistic. I think possibly. Well, there's autism in my family, so perhaps I'm a high functioning autistic person with attention deficit disorder as well. And I think there should be a place for people like us in the spiritual world, and we basically have to adapt the methods to suit our psychological, well, not psychological, but even neurological problems or difficulties or challenges. So that's what sort of the cross I have to bear, as it were. That I think very fast, and sometimes I think too much. But the final point to make about thoughts is that thoughts also carry. They carry energy, and sometimes this energy is incredibly powerful. And the thought themselves, like you could have a thought about the cosmos, and this thought about the cosmos, perhaps even to an extent, creates the cosmos. So you don't have to go cross-legged and think of nothing, and become nothing. You can actually have certain thoughts come to you, and they are creative thoughts, but they're also creating thoughts, or they're also preserving thoughts, or improving thoughts that improve your relationship with the universe. So, I don't think that meditation is without thought. I mean, contemplation, you contemplate the words of other people that are written down or on YouTube or something, that's okay. So that's why I've invented this thing called introspection, where you have thoughts, and those thoughts may come very quickly. They may tumble through the brain very fast. They do in my case anyway, and in the case of other people that I know. And so we're not sort of, we're not empty of thoughts. We're not sort of empty chalices, or empty vessels making the most noise. We need to hope we're not. We're actually, simply applying meditation to our life situation, which is the fact that I find it very, very difficult to be attentive. And I'm out of my head most of the time. So not on drugs, but because I don't touch drugs or alcohol anymore, but simply on a natural high. and a natural sort of agitation, as it were. So I do find it very difficult to centre myself. It seems to me that my centre is wherever I'm thinking at the moment. And I don't think that's a bad thing. You know what I mean? I don't think that's a wicked thing. I should go whip myself for not being able to centre myself, because I'm more worried about the definition of the word centering than I am about centering. But I think that's okay. I think definitions and analysis is just the way some people's brains work, and then I have to work within that, as well as working, of course, with a barking dog in the background, and this is what. So if this applies to you, then I wouldn't worry about it. I wouldn't sort of say, oh, mea culpa for not being able to centre yourself. It's okay, and you can go through life, in fact, just grasping at a little bit of centering, but mostly a lot of these thoughts are buzzing around in your head, and if they're constructive thoughts, they could be literally constructive. They could be constructing reality. They could be constructing cosmos. They could be constructing Gnosticism, for example. So basically, we're not talking about gnosis so much as we're talking about, the study of Gnosticism, Gnosticology, as it were, and thoughts which pertain to Gnosticology, the study of Gnosticism, the study of Gnosis, could actually be quite positive rather than negative. So, don't freak out at the fact that you can't meditate. I don't think it's, or you can't quieten the mind. Like the dog now, the dog will finish barking when it's less excited about life. It's only barking because it's excited, and then when it's calm, it'll stop barking. So I suppose when you've got nothing to be excited about, you'll naturally attain calmness and quietude, because you won't be able to bark about anything because there's nothing to bark about, But don't worry. I mean, a dog is a barking creature. Well, especially if it's a badly trained dog like this one, as I've got, like its owner, badly trained, and it barks when it gets excited. That's I'm afraid the dog I have to live with, really. Some dogs are really well trained and don't bark. And some minds are very well trained and they don't bark either. And they don't get excited about things and have loads of thoughts and can't stop them. But I'm not that kind of dog, I'm afraid. I'm not a well-trained dog. I'm a badly trained dog. Like a lot of people nowadays, I think, it's our education system and our parenting. We're allowed to get excited and to bark and have emotional scenes and get hysterical. Whereas in the old days, you had to have a stiff upper lip and you weren't allowed to show your emotions and feelings. You had to keep everything under control. And it was probably better. Then probably meditation is quite easy, really, because you already got the sort of head start. But nowadays, it's very, very difficult for people to have it. I mean, there's a lot more attention deficit disorder around, and not all of it. In fact, probably very little of it is actually neurological. I think a lot of it actually is bad parenting and bad schooling, to be perfectly honest with you. And the trade-off then is that people have got lots of thoughts and they're very creative and they're very clever. They're very they have innovation. They find innovation very easy. And maybe that's part of what will save the species in the long run. This kind of indisciplined mind will be, somebody will come up with a fantastic idea which saves the whole planet from disaster. But of course, you've got to have also people that are able to be disciplined enough to manifest that thought in a practical way. Otherwise, I suppose we're all just going to die. But since we're all going to die anyway, and probably as a species, maybe there's reason for why we can't meditate, why we're sort of like the barking dog and we get excited and hysterical about everything. Maybe it's something that we shouldn't fight. It's just maybe there's an adaptive reason for it, and maybe there's a spiritual reason for it. Maybe it's got something to do with our the soul's trajectory through the universe and through the geography of the mind, and it's going to go, and it's okay ultimately. At least that's my excuse anyway. So I can't meditate. That's all I'm going to admit to today.